Greetings. Hey, it's Junkman from VintageRock.com here at NAMM 2014. I happened to be riding up the escalator yesterday, and I look at someone's badge, and it said Kevin Godley. And I said, Kevin Godley from Godley and Cream, 10cc, exactly. So we decided to talk to Kevin for a while. Welcome.
Thank you very much. This place is insane.
Yeah, well, as it always is.
Yeah, I've never been here before, but it's like if Disneyland had a musician area, it would be like this.
Pretty much. And it's, like I said, you never know who you're going to bump into, and it was such a pleasure to run into you.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
You were a very busy guy. I mean, outside of the, a lot of you guys know him from 10cc or the Godley and Cream videos, like the music videos that we produce, which, we could talk about a little bit. But there's a big thing that you got going on right now. Tell us a little bit about Whole World Band, the app that you've got.
Yes, Whole World Band is interesting. It's I describe it as a multi-track recording studio in sound and vision. And essentially it means that any musician can play a piece of music on a Whole World Band and have other players play with them from anywhere in the world, any location in the world. And those clips can be joined together into what we call a video mix or a video mosaic and have a global piece of music.
It's kind of like a SoundCloud, right?
Well, it is, except it's in vision as well as audio. So it's how you look is just as important as how you sound.
No one gave you that idea. Just decided that it was time to. It was a lot easier than sending over clips of music to different people that you wanted to work with, or was it just that you wanted to get the music out and let more people find it themselves?
Well, a number of things. I think probably the main reason is I directed a TV show for BBC Two in the UK back in 1990 called One World, One Voice, which was a celebration of global intent, the possibilities of the global village. And I spent 6 weeks traveling the world with a sound crew and a film crew. And we began a piece of music in New York with Sting and Africa Bambaataa, filmed it being made, and added people in every city we went to around the globe. And we ended up with a truly global piece of music. And at the end I was kind of frustrated that piece of music was set in stone. No one could interact with it, no one could take it any further. And so the idea just kind of drifted away. But in 2008, when I got interested in the online experience, a light bulb went off and said, wait a minute, maybe I can revitalize this idea in a new way, and maybe people can play with each other. Unfortunately, the technology didn't quite exist. And in the intervening years, I gradually found people who could improve the technology and bring the dream to life, which is what happened last year, which is why we're here today. So it's a dream that's become a reality for me.
Is it also something that you're constantly updating and upgrading and things like that, or?
Very much so. It's we have version 1 out. There's been a number of updates, 4 updates to make it smoother experience, but it's a new musical ecosystem. It's a new way for people to meet music together. And people seem to like it. What can I say?
Where can people find out more information about it?
Well, they can download the app from the iTunes App Store. It's free at the moment. It's called Whole World Band. Or they can go to wholeworldband.com, which is our website. Find some information about it there. There's also a Facebook page and a Twitter page. So there's information out there online for you to check it out and see if you like what we're doing.
During the video age, you became really like a superstar. I mean, after being working with a band and doing pop, you work with some of the biggest videos. The Cry video obviously was probably a start, but I mean, I'm looking at my list over here. The Do They Know It's Christmas video, that was you. That was your direction and creativity. The Beatles' Real Love. Different ones by U2 and Phil Collins and Bryan Adams. How did you get involved in all that?
Well, it was simple. Well, it wasn't simple. I think we were in the right place at the right time. I think we were, Godley and Cream had left 10cc by then, and we'd made a record, and there was a single coming out for the record. And the first inklings that visual material was important to the process was happening in the UK. So we resolved to make a little film to go with our track, which coincidentally was called An Englishman in New York. It wasn't the Sting track, it was a different song. So we designed a storyboard for a film without really knowing what we were doing, and we went to our record label and said, we want to make a film. And they said, okay, fools.
Yeah.
But we'll only let you do it if you work with a director who's done this before. Which is exactly what we did. And we were just blown away by the process and the possibilities of doing it. What it actually did was it reconnected us with our art roots, because before we got into music we were art students. We were like many people of that era. We studied at art college, so that sensibility, that aesthetic was always there. It was just that era reactivated it for us. So we did this thing and we kind of partially directed it, and it became known in the industry that we'd partially directed it, and some people we knew. It was the very beginning of the new romantic period in English pop.
Duran and all
Duran
that.
Duran, and there was a band called Visage who was about to, and they were signed to the same label. And they were due to make a video, and they asked if we would make the video. And we said, okay, and we did for about £5,000 or something crazy. And that record was a hit. And subsequently, Toyah Wilcox asked us to do a video, and that was a hit. I think why we were successful is because we didn't know what we were doing at all. We were just tapping into our own ideas of what would look interesting, and therefore there were no rules as far as we were concerned.
You pretty much had access to whatever you needed back then, right?
Kind of. I mean, the money wasn't great, but I think the most significant thing is musicians felt more comfortable dealing with musicians. They felt that we understood what they were about a little more than dealing with professional filmmakers, and I think there's a great deal of truth in that. So that gave us our in. Before we knew what was happening, we were offered the opportunity, or just by luck or by chance, to do videos that became significant. I think probably one of them being Rocket for Herbie Hancock. And again, it was like, okay, well, we found these robots on a documentary program. We thought, that looks like this sounds. So let's just fucking do it. And the label and management hadn't a clue what we were doing.
But they greenlighted the deal and said, go.
They bought into it because I think around about that time people were sensing that this medium was going to be significant. So we were living in an era where the lunatics were running the asylum, which didn't last inevitably.
I love that term.
But we were allowed our run of the lunatic asylum for a period of time, which was great.
And very successful.
I believe so.
I mean, you don't get. I don't think you get much bigger than the Beatles giving you a call and saying, "Look, we're back together. Would you piece something together?"
Yeah, I quite like that.
Tell us a little bit about the process on that one. I'm very interested in that because I'm a big Beatle fan. But
Well, I mean, I've worked with Paul a couple of times prior to that. I've known Paul for a long time, and we live near each other. So he asked if I'd be interested in doing one of the tracks. Essentially, it was an editorial exercise more than anything else, in that there was a lot of archive footage in the offing. They'd just done that huge series, which was terrific, and so there was a lot of archive footage. But I wanted to base it around something. I want there to be a spine. I didn't want it to be a documentary cut down to 3 minutes. So there was a film that Yoko Ono shot of John Lennon way back in the mists of time at something like 5,000 frames per second, just of his face. And I resolved to film.
kind of a Warhol thing, maybe.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, she did a lot of interesting things, but I kind of alighted on this and thought, well, why don't I do one of each remaining member of the Beatles? So we had each member of the Beatles doing the same thing. And that was kind of the spine of it, and the rest was the archive footage. And I remember throwing, or giving the impression, I'd thrown some various Beatle artifacts off a roof. Some drums, some guitars, some Sgt. Pepper costumes, and then reversing the film. So those were the new elements. But intercut with that was all the archive footage, and there was a session at Paul's home studio with George, who came down for that. So it was a joy,
Now, do you have, learning all the stuff that you did with the working with video and stuff like that? Do you have a preference of video as opposed to music, or?
No.
I mean, the music obviously was first.
The big difference about music and video is when you make music, it's instantaneous. You can sit down with a guy, and within half an hour you've got something that exists. You've sculpted something out of air. When you make a video, you have a crew, you have production, you have a budget, you have to have wardrobe, you have to have editorial. So essentially you're filtering your ideas through a number of people. So it's more difficult to retain the initial concept 100% all the way through.
In that as, do you think it takes away from people's imagination at all, or
In what respect?
in terms of the listening to the music and deciding what they think it's about, as opposed to you showing them what it's about,
Oh, I don't want to. I never want to show him what it's about. What I avoid.
or your interpretation?
My interpretation is to avoid the literal at all costs. If someone's kissing a girl and going for a drive in a car, I will never show that, because they know that because the word's telling them. You know, I don't want to fucking show it. What I always try and do is to conjure a visual atmosphere that matches what the music feels like. That's where I'm coming from, and I usually, if possible, try and involve some performance from the artist within that, particularly if they're good at performing to camera. Not all artists are, but some are. So I also am more attracted to in-camera work than weeks and weeks of work in editorial and post-production. That drives me up the fucking wall.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
So
Editing.
yeah, and also the editorial process has become more difficult. It's become more comprehensive with non-linear editing, because you can try this shot there, I can also try it here, I can try it there, longer, shorter. But in the end, it means you defer making a decision. So something that may have taken you one day back in the day maybe takes 3 or 4 days now, because it can. The project expands to fill the amount of time you have available. So, and there's no hands-on ability anymore.
Right. Now it's all done by a team.
It's all done by programming. If you want one picture to fade to another, an editor has to calculate it, show it you. If you don't like it, he has to do it again. You can't actually do it, which means that there's no potential for happy accidents, which was half the fun.
Well, it's fascinating just to talk to you, man. I mean, I admire your mind. I get it, you know.
Left of it.
What's next on your agenda? What's next?
Well, this Whole World Bound for me is, for me, it's kind of my legacy, because it's bringing music and pictures together in a completely new way. And my ambition for it, if it's not too pretentious to say so, is it for it to coexist alongside CD, DVD, MP3, streaming, different ways to access music. But our way of accessing music is immersive and creative, and the ordinary Joe can become part of the creative process and work with some artists who they admire, and there is the possibility of them earning some money from the experience as well, which is very, very important to Whole World Band. I should stress this, it's not just a fun throwaway idea. Any artist who performs a track on Whole World Band can set their own terms and conditions, including a price of entry to their session, anything from 89 cents to €5.99. And they can offer a share of the revenue they earn on Whole World Band, plus a share in the publishing of a deal, of publishing of a song should it be a new song, plus a session fee should they take your contribution off the platform and use it in a mainstream release. Also, any contributors to the platform also have the ability to earn money too. So we've spent a considerable amount of
A lot of thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could just put something out that was just fun, but I'm sort of looking around me, particularly at events like this, and understanding that more and more that musicians don't really get a fair slice of the pie anymore. Everything is aimed squarely and 100% at the consumer. So the guys who make the shit aren't really getting what they deserve. This hopefully is one way to redress the balance.
What it's like you're walking by a cafe or something like that, and you hear some of the songs. You know, I mean, you're not somebody that's out in the media forefront a whole lot for like a younger generation. When you hear younger people that are listening to, like, you know, Things We Did for Love or I'm Not in Love or things like that you were involved in, tell us about your thoughts that are going through your head when you're that. Do you immediately flash back to that when you're recording them, or writing and things like that, or writing process and things, or do you just smile and walk on?
I usually smile and walk on, but what usually happens is I say, I know that, what is that? I recognize that. Oh, it's me, okay. But I think the more interesting thing that has happened since the internet came to be an important player in music is that there was a period of time, probably in the 90s, where 10cc was perceived to be a guilty pleasure because we didn't have an image, we didn't have what was perceived as being some of the important elements of pop stardom. We just made interesting music. We weren't Bowie, we weren't T-Rex, we weren't punk. We didn't have an agenda. We didn't OD and die. We didn't fuck everything that moved. We just made music. So we didn't quite fit the mold. But what has happened is somehow the internet has provided the means for people who are interested to become musical archaeologists and actually dig deep and discover stuff that maybe people who were considered to be a guilty pleasure, maybe you don't have to be so guilty. Maybe they actually contributed something that was quite interesting.
Come up with new interpretations that you didn't even think of, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's kind of nice. So people approach me and say, "We love what you do. You were a big influence on me," and Godley and Cream stuff. It blows my mind that the stuff that we did, that we just did because I guess we couldn't do anything else, that actually is perceived to be of interest today to anybody. So that's a good feeling.
Well, again, Kevin Godley, and really thank you for talking with us here at VintageRock.com, and enjoy the rest of NAMM.
Thank you. I'll try it. It's like Vietnam, but what the hell?
JunkmanVintageRock.com again with Kevin Godley.